This is 2OF Entertainment.
Welcome to the Lost Dollar Business Club, where we talk about business, and not just business. We talk about what makes businesses go up and what makes businesses go down. If you're interested in businesses, this is where it is. We talk about the global economy. We talk about global politics. We talk about everything and anything business related that affects your life on a global scale as well as a local scale. And don't miss after the show, Lost and Found.
Welcome to Lost Dollar Business Club. And I feel like this is, although it's episode X 100 for this show, it's kind of technically episode 2 for the little dream team here, beautiful men. And I laugh because I was just on a Zoom call onboarding a guy who has joined my own men's membership. And we were talking about how fucking hard business can be sometimes. And we'll touch on that in a minute. But the theme of the show is Titans of Business. And what I asked the guys was to basically pick, one person that they might like to discuss has impacted them, impacted the world, has grown a big business. Because I think there's so many things you can learn from these people. And when people that are starting or growing businesses, my view is always, try and look at people that are where you want to be. And you'd be amazed how much information and advice you can get from them. And one of the most important things there is to avoid the fuck ups that they've made. That's one of the big things for me is what hasn't worked for them. Try and not do that yourself to make you look, good. But Nick and David, how hard was it for you to pick a Titan? Because I had one or two, and I said to you guys, as long as it wasn't Bill Gates, who I think is probably a depopulationist, but was it easy, without saying who it is, was it easy for you to think this person? Dave? Nick can go first.
Okay. I think from it's so interesting. I think it was a little bit challenging only because it kind of like, for what, what kind of space are you kind of looking at? So there's multiple spaces. There's marketing, there's business growth, there's how you've changed the world. So it was challenging, but it was fun contemplating who those people would be.
The worst thing you can do is ask other people's advice, because I told one or two people who, guys I was on a call with last night who I picked. I'm like, no, you should pick whoever. And I was like, yeah, I know. The thing is, there are so many great ones. You could probably do a 5-hour podcast and pick each, one person from marketing, sales, online business, offline business, etc. What about you, David? Was it an easy one to decide?
Yes, because I've chosen no one.
I was going to say, I'm sure you've gone for a highly uncontroversial figure. I'm sure that's the case.
That is somebody who was an amazing influence on my life that taught me so much. But he was a titan in my life. Let's put it that way, but not necessarily in business.
Fair enough. Well, before we jump into Titans, I just wanted to talk quickly about, and again, it's not a technical topic, but as in business can be fucking hard sometimes. And that's, led from several conversations I've had in the last few days with men, either in my membership and or like the onboarding process, or just guys who are local to me. And one of the views was, of course, some businesses are still doing well, but a lot of the small businesses that we were speaking to were struggling, and it's become harder because energy costs are up, staff costs are up, there's more tax and what have you. And it's just a good reminder, because one of the guys said to me, because he runs a business, he hasn't really didn't have anybody else that he could kind of discuss the fact that it's really challenging with, which I understand. And he said, it's good to know others feel like that. And I said, look, for me, I've been running technically 2 businesses, and I'm now part of another one for nearly 10 years. And I've had days where it's been great and it flows brilliantly. And other times you'll wake up and you're like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing today. Because either you've launched something and it's not gone as well as you thought. You've created a lead magnet that isn't doing that well. You're trying to do your tax and accounts and you can't remember what you're meant to do. And I just thought I'd remind people, business is great when it's great, but it can be really hard. So Nick, if you, give us an example of how you've found the difficulties of business.
Yeah, I think it's really the big topic you touch on there is the fact that there's this sense of others are struggling as well. I think that's really what resonates with me, is the fact that you kind of go, so the other idiots that are doing this, and there's either they're winning at it or they're losing at it or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, as you say, like there's ups and downs, and because that Insta life, you kind of look in on someone's life and you're like, it's going so fantastically and everything's cool. And of course, when we pitch our businesses, like, it's going great, and we started this little division, and we started that, and this is going well, and everybody out from the outside is going, gee, that's amazing, that's so cool. And then you get off the call, and you're like, okay, what did I just sell? How did I just do that?
Yeah.
Or you get off the call, and you're kind of like, okay, geez, what this person's giving me uphill, and that particular client is not signing the deal, or we've got to figure out a way around how where they're struggling. Or product doesn't get supplied, or you're talking about lead magnets. The clients are giving you things lastminute.com, like it's supposed to have been delivered yesterday. Can you deliver the stuff by immediately?
Yeah.
So I think all of those kind of things are really, really interesting, and I think having a group or a community around you is super, super useful, because number one, as you say, you can learn from what people didn't do correctly, and yeah, I mean, you kind of nailed three spaces. Like, when it comes to the tax and accounting side, that's just a nightmare on its own. And your accountant's not kind of picking up what you're putting down, and you're trying to figure out cash flow, and then how you're going to pay salaries at the end of the month. So, you as a business owner, you're lying there, particular salaries one. You're kind of like, okay, cool. So we've got $1 million owed to us, but we have nothing in the bank. So how do I get from when clients are going to pay me 120 days to paying the team now? And what does that look like? And I think those kind of things are really, really interesting when it comes to, I think it boils down to what is success, right? Because we all kind of want to look at someone and go, are you successful? Well, yeah, they look successful, but what is, and that's a whole topic, and we have really got to do a show on their own on what defines success in business. But yeah, I think it's really interesting when it comes to those things, because it isn't easy. And I think it's everybody's like, you want to become an entrepreneur. Like it takes a special kind of character. It takes, and I think we chatted very briefly on about last week, is like take that special kind of character to create that container for other people to come into. So I think you got to, some people are cut out for it and others aren't, and that's okay. We're not all creatives, we're not all accountants, like, thank goodness, because then it makes life fun, right?
I think this is the big thing I've learned, that was harder when you started working for yourself. And I actually said this morning, I'm not a techie person. So when I worked in the city as a trader for a few years and then a broker, of course, if I had any problem, I just picked up the phone and called IT, and literally, and without having, you don't sound rude, but it's like, just get to my desk and sort this fucking thing out. Because that's what their job was. And your job was to make money from executing deals. And of course, then once you work for yourself, you're trying to link Calendly on Schedule Once and Squarespace and this and that, and now you've got Zapier and you can have all these CRMs, what have you. And I hate it. And I'm very lucky that my partner Emma, she used to work in the city, and she would set up trading systems for banks. So she'd go onto the trading floor and sort it out. So she can sit there and she'll go, well, just read this 12-point plan, do this. And I literally hover in the background, like a bad smell, just pretending I'm helping and chirping in. So it's a reminder, I love the creative stuff. I love the podcasts. I love generating energy and helping men, but I hate the tech stuff. And the more you can outsource that, I understand, the better. David, you've been in business, longer than me and Nick have been alive, basically. So tell us about you and your joys of.
Once explained to me a long time ago, and then I experienced the same thing in my working life. And now I understand it all. So that's the explanation. Let me tell you what was illustrated to me. It was a circus act of which you had to throw a plate onto a wobbly stick. And then you went to the second plate and put another spinning plate on top of the wobbly stick. And thus it went on and on and on until you reach a point where life's great and you have all these plates and all these plates are spinning, and then you turn around and look back at the very first one that you put up, and it's already smashed on the floor. And that's being, as somebody once said to me, Oh, you're an entrepreneur, are you? So yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, and that's how I visualize being an entrepreneur. There's continuous, well, not so much now in the autumn years of my life, but there's continuous running up and down and spinning the plates on the sticks. And at a certain point in time, you realize that you can only handle that. Like my stick allocation. I always wanted to have 100, but the reality is probably only 5.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to drop the other 95 in order to realize that.
And be okay with that. Yes.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Or
yeah. It sums up. And again, I think it's important. And as a reminder, I know lots of people that run their own businesses and work in businesses, and actually working in a business. Yes, you don't have the flexibility and freedom of, you have a boss, but also you usually have an assigned role and task, and that's what you do. Whereas it's the people that are working for themselves in a smaller business are juggling all the things. When I was a broker, my job was to sit there and just say, talk to traders, look at the market, execute deals, make money on the phone. That's it. When
you had one stick, and people kept giving you plates all day to spin them on.
That's it. Whereas, and also when you left at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock, you just put the plate down and you fucked off home. You didn't have other plates spinning in the background of work because you then came back in. Whereas now, I know so many entrepreneurs, let's call it, or basically just people that work for themselves, that it's impossible to properly switch off. Because also when you're away on holiday or you're off sick, that's no one else is going to do the work for you. So it doesn't disappear. It stacks up. So anyway,
I always try, and when I speak to people, I always try and give them visual stories, because if you get that image into your head, then a lot of stuff falls into place. You think, oh yeah, okay, now I get it. Yeah, okay. And I said it to people as well. They're running around all over the place. They're just running, but nothing. But they're not. They don't have the energy even left just to tweak the rod, to keep the plate spinning. So yeah, there's a literally, if you give a balance you have to find between how many sticks you can keep spinning, how many plates you can keep, how many sticks you can keep tweaking, how many plates you can keep spinning.
And of course, we all know that as a lot of people I have spoke to, done coaching with, or in my membership, you might have just got it right at spinning all these plates, and then the government decided to shut everything and lock everything down. And sometimes it can be luck as anything, because you could have had a really good business, but if the government decided they want to destroy you, then there's not much you can do about it.
Or they'll say, look, you must have this extra stick, and this is the plate that you are going to put on it, because this is what we're telling you. And that is literally, one too many, or you have to lose something else that you're doing, because you just haven't got the path or the energy or the knowledge to keep it all spinning.
And actually, I wanted to, we're talking in another episode, but business for me isn't just ideas and execution and lead flow and CRM. It's also energy, because how you show up as whether you're the founder, the leader, the boss, the desk head, whatever. Energy is a very important part of it. A, what you're giving out to others, and B, how you're fueling yourself. So we'll definitely cover that one in the future. But let's go on to Titans of Business. And it was my brilliant brain that came up with that idea. Nick, do you want to go first? Because I don't know who you're going to pick, which is what it's nice to kind of be surprised by this. Who is it, brother?
Exactly. So what immediately came to mind was being South African, we tried to keep it in the South African space, and who is the most probably prominent South African in the world at the moment, and that is a dear friend Elon Musk.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah. So a character which I think is has been super controversial over the years, certainly with some of the strategies that he's put in place, and how he's dealt with the media, and what the facades are that he puts up. In the last couple of years, I've been watching. Obviously, he's been involved a lot in the American politics side, and just kind of watching what that looks like in terms of what's being presented to us has been really interesting to watch. But I think from a base perspective of where he came from, and looking at the man's dedication to the job, I think is the one. Like literally, he talks about sleeping on the factory floor. I mean, as founder CEO, like he owns like most of the company, and he's still the one sleeping on the factory floor, trying to figure out, what are the issues with production, how better to arrange production. So I think dedication and entrepreneurship, I've found in businesses that many people who want to be entrepreneurs don't understand that's the kind of dedication that it takes. And we were talking about it now, keeping all those plates in the air. If you just come in and you walk away, you're like, you can put your plate down, come back, pick it up in the morning, start spinning it again. Entrepreneurship, you walk away and you've got all these plates spinning, and how do you keep them spinning? And so that's where that dedication comes in. Are you prepared? And I think, Dave, to your point, which we didn't touch on because we were just talking about the business side, is you have family, you have business, you've got all these multiple facets of the life. So not only do you have plates in business, you've then got the plates. I'm just carrying on with your thing there, Dave.
Analogy,
glass balls, but with the plates, is that now what plates are you prepared to put down or let smash, whichever way?
Well, at a certain point of time, Nick, as you say, but you're so engrossed in it, you can't see the difference. You just know that they all have to keep moving, keep spinning, and you hope that you don't drop the one or two do drop. How many successful entrepreneurs, male and female, are divorced?
100%.
Or have very fractious relationships with their children.
Yeah.
So there's
Nick,
a cost for everything.
How does the media in South Africa portray Elon Musk? And I'm always interested because obviously I don't see how they portray him in the US and over here, because of course, obviously the media is totally controlled and has its own complete agendas that they can decide whether they want you to like or hate someone. It's usually nowhere in between. And so it's always an interesting one to see how they portray him over there compared to in the UK.
I think the last little tranche, especially with Starlink. So when Starlink went up, and I mean he is South African, so everybody is South Africans, leading on him to say, listen, it's free data to the whole of Africa. Why are we not in Africa? And he has started rolling out into certain countries in Africa, but why not South Africa? And there's been quite a large pushback with particularly ownership. So in South Africa, there's the idea of having a certain portion of ownership, black ownership in South Africa. So that's been a pushback from his side, and so there's been a certain portion of negative publicity around him because he's not wanting to give away a portion of the business to a black consortium in South Africa. So I think that's what's most recently been in the news. Prior to that, I think it goes through phases of he's the star boy of like, oh, look at what we produced and this is so cool, but at the same time then you then look at certain things that he's not doing, and I think that's in my opinion, it's a lot of what these big guys often go through is, you're a billionaire, why aren't you fixing poverty in Africa? You're a billionaire, why don't you help all businesses in South Africa, or whatever those statements are. And I think so it depends where you kind of go and what day you're looking at, and what's right for the public at the moment at that point in time, and what serves government of the time. So I think he goes through phases, certainly from that perspective. I think the other thing that was really, really cool about, this is really where entrepreneurship gets really interesting, is what is the strategy behind all the things that you're doing? So all these plates that you're running, what is that? And there was an American spy. He's quite prolific on social media now. His name, I can't get his name, but and he talks about dominoes. And one of his CIA bosses came in, and he always had these I think it was 3 or 5 dominoes. And he was like, why do you have these dominoes? Why do you carry the dominoes around with you all the time? And the analogy was, if you put the dominoes next to one another, you have to hit one domino every time to knock them out, right? So the energy is times 3, so you've got to hit them over 3 times. Whereas if you place them in line, you just have to hit one, and the other 2 then knock down automatically. And the concept behind that is, how do you create those dominoes? So what do you do that you do one thing and 2 or 3 things happen? And whether that's technology or whether that's certain strategy that you put in place, often having chatted to young entrepreneurs, it's a case of just running ahead with whatever you can do. And often the advice is just pick one thing, stick with one thing. Like how do you do that one thing? And I only give you this because if you take a step back from what Elon's done, it's really fascinating how, if you look, I mean, his drive has always been to go to Mars, right? And everyone's like, oh man, you're smoking your socks. What are you thinking about? But if you take a step back, you're kind of like, okay, so he went into electric vehicles. On Mars, there's not going to be any fuel. So what do? You've got to have electric vehicles. Then you look at what he's doing with the tunnels. You're like, that's interesting. You can't live on the surface. You've got to go into, okay, so now he's learning about how to do tunnels. There's the rockets. So you kind of put all these things together and you're like, hang on, there's actually a bigger strategy here. Like you don't even see it as to what's happening. And it's really interesting to watch that, because then you apply that into your own business and go, okay, take one step back, look at my business and go, what am I doing that creates that one domino or that one thing that goes into multiple? Because I've watched many, and myself as well, you run around and you do multiple projects, and those projects in sort of, that's where the plates start falling down, is if a plate falls, like, why did it fall? Was it not part of my strategy? And how can I keep it automatically sort of spinning? So that was a really interesting one that came to mind.
It's really interesting. This is what I love. I mean, basically, connecting with other men, because, even with either David's plate spinning idea or for you, like with dominoes, in my head, I was already writing an article 3 times a week that goes out to hundreds of men. And that kind of linked to, I was like, it's a really good idea. So much of what you need to do in life, how can you link things up to have a domino effect? And I'll tell you why I laughed when you said Elon Musk, because what I love over the last few years is that you had the people that believe that we should all be driving electric vehicles, who are championing him and, wanking themselves off over the fact that he's doing this stuff. And then as soon as he started supporting Trump, they were like, burn his cars. And it must be so hard for those people to be like, what, do I like him or not? I don't know what the agenda's telling me I should do. What needs to be my opinion? So yeah, I just thought, whether people like him or not, that you can't ignore him, if that makes sense. So yeah, and it's just interesting because I wrote an article a year or 2 ago about him where I said if nothing, he's an interesting character, especially when he wears Baphomet costumes to events and stuff like that, which probably means there's a rabbit hole to go down somewhere. But one thing is, don't be vanilla, don't be boring, which is one thing he isn't. Good. All right. Well, that's ticked off Titan number 1. David, lay us with Titan number 2, and I'll give you mine afterwards.
Titan number 2 was I worked. My mother always said to me, "Oh, you will you ever stop talking?" And my father said, "Well, you better do. If all you can do is talk, you better go and do something. Go and sell something."
Yeah.
So it's at 15, and then just turned 16. I became a Saturday boy, working in a tailor's, and I ended up working for this gentleman called John. We just leave him as being John the tailor. And John taught me everything. I mean, literally everything that you'd ever want to know about sales. And he just had a completely different way of looking at it. You see now that, there's loads of people have finally realized that it's not like, push as it used to be. You have to be a little bit more subtle about it. But in those days, like we're talking many in the mid 70s for me. So he said, look, I'll tell you what, Dave. He said, there's a guy that comes in the shop and he buys a jacket and I sell him a pair of trousers to go with that. And then he goes back to the pub and sits down, talk to his mates. His mates say to him, what have you got in here? He said, I've got a jacket. He said, I thought you were only going to get a jacket today. Well, what else you got? He said, I've got a pair of trousers. And he said, yeah, they're great. The guy was really helpful. He said, but if you'd have gone to the shop and you tried to force that pair of trousers onto this other guy, he would have come back and he would have said to himself, you don't want to go into that shop, because the guy's, all he wants to do is sell you something.
Sell, yeah.
But the subtle message was that your clients will always justify buying something if you give them the ability to do it. And so John was very clever, because if you'd sell a suit he was a bespoke tailor, So in those days, people would come in every week for their weekly wages and pay towards their bespoke suit for their wedding. And it just, measure them all up. He wouldn't say anything to them until about sort of week 4 or 5 into the 6-week payment, and it'd come in, and he'd say to him, "Oh, I found these for you," and then he would just walk away. And then the guy would say, "What did you find?" So I found these for you. He said, "Cufflinks." Cufflinks. He said, "Well, cufflinks." He said, "Well, I've got my suit yet." He said, "Well, you're going to need them, aren't you? To go with that lovely shirt that you're going to get to go with the whole thing." Shirt? I hadn't thought of a shirt. No, don't worry about the shirt. Get the cufflinks. Once you've got the cufflinks, you can get the shirt. And so he turned it completely round the other way, so that people would come in, and when people would come in to buy a shirt, right, and he'd walk up to them with a belt. "Have you seen this? Oh, look great with your trousers and a nice shirt on top of it." He'd walk off. And I just thought, in the beginning, I thought this guy's quite deranged.
Nuts, yeah.
But then he said to me afterwards, he said, "Do you know what?" He said, "Because when they leave the store, if they've bought it, they will never ever criticize you or the store. To be the best shop they've ever been in."
I tell everyone.
They tell everyone.
Yeah.
He said, "But if you try and force something down with them, and they go to the pub and they think, what's that? Well, yeah, this bloke, I didn't really know how to say no to him, and I got these trousers, and
Yeah.
And that actually changed my whole view of life. So every time anybody wants me, I think, I need to sell a shirt. I'm only really thinking about the cufflinks.
Mm-hmm. It's a good
Yeah.
question because I think sales is a psychology, is an art form, and when you think back to when I say the olden days, but pre Zooms and Team Google Meets and all that kind of stuff, the businesses that were local, you still had to learn the art of sales one-to-one, whereas these days you can take loads of courses on it and stuff, and I think that funny, there's lots of topics I'd like to talk about in business, but ultimately, if you can't learn to sell, then the likelihood is your business won't do as well, or it won't do well at all if you can't learn somehow the sales part of it. So in a way, you've kind of touched on something, I think, because of course now you can employ closers and professional teams that can do it, but I wish that stuff was taught in school. Kids should be taught how to sell, because you're selling all day to everybody. When you go out on a date, you're selling yourself, if that makes sense.
Well, what are we doing now? What are we doing now?
Yeah,
we're selling ourselves, are we not?
Yeah,
this is why we're here.
I often feel like I am. I need to charge more as well. But good. Well, the interesting thing is the difference between your Titan and Nick's and mine is that Nick's never met Elon Musk, I guess.
No.
Whereas David has, and I have met my Titan, who I would guess everybody know who it is, which is Tony Robbins, who is, of course...
Well, I'll let you into a little secret, Anthony. I had to Google him because I had no idea.
It shocks me.
And I'll tell you why, because I avoid all these people, all these titans and books about, because I'm thinking to myself, I've got to spend a whole weekend reading somebody's biography where I could be working and on a project for myself. Why am I wasting time learning about somebody else's success? I should be busy about my working on my own success.
Because most people won't work on their own success. That's the problem. You're a rare gem in the field. And this is the problem, because men and women lack motivation, ideas, accountability, a network, a plan. They go to events because they're desperate for something. And I've been to 3 Tony Robbins events. And if anybody that doesn't know, Tony Robbins is probably the biggest personal development person in the world. And I think it was 1983 that he started Robbins Research International, but has gone on. And again, I looked it up, supposedly he's worth now, 600 million with over 50 private companies that generate billions. And what I saw with him, which I learned from, is the importance of the ability to scale, because he is one man, but instead of doing one-on-one stuff, you can do events where you might have, 5,000 to 10,000 people in a room, And nowadays you can have, you could have 1 million people online basically. And with his books and with his events and with his webinars and everything, it just reminds you that, there is the possibility, especially nowadays, to scale. So I've been to his events in London, in Miami, in Tenerife at the Ritz there. And I wrote it down so I didn't cock it up. But one of the big takeaways for me was it's not the lack of resources, it's the lack of resourcefulness that stops you. And that's what I've seen with a lot of guys I do coaching with is they're not around the right people. They're not kind of getting out of their comfort zone, and they're not tapping into the resources they've got available to them through fear, through lack of ideas, through lack of mentorship or coaching or what have you. And that's what I've seen, I saw through the Tony Robbins events. And again, I've been to events where he stood right in front of me, spoken to a whole crowd. And I've seen the transformation he was able to make in people through two ways. One was just being in the crowd. And I remember there was a guy there who, for want of a better phrase, was acting like a bit of a pussy. And he was saying he had a relationship and his wife was walking all over him and he was unsure of his direction in life. And obviously Tony has the event. It's pure theatre. But I remember Tony talking to the guy, and then in the end, he grabbed hold of and the guy had quite longish hair. He grabbed hold of the back of the guy's hair and he said, imagine I'm taking you over to a pond and you are a sheep and you're looking in the water and you're looking at your reflection and you're realizing you're not a fucking sheep, you're a lion. But you've been around sheep for so long, you've forgotten that you're a lion. And as they did that, they played whatever great track it was, and 5,000 people exploded. But like you say, that analogy of like you're surrounded by sheep, but you're not meant to be with a sheep. You're a lion, and it was brilliant. And I tell you what was great. That event for me showed the power of getting people together in a room, because if you had just one-on-one for that wouldn't be as powerful. But when you had thousands of people and the energy in the room, they then spoke about the masculine energy and feminine energy, and how these days we're told that, men can be women and women can be men and what have you. And what was interesting was after they spoke about male energy, they played some kind of like war music, and a lot of the guys all at once were standing up and kind of chanting something. I can't remember, just say like, yes, yes. And at the end of it, it all went quiet. And Tony said something like, anything from the females in the crowd. And a woman put her hand up and they gave the microphone and they said, yes. And she said, I just want to get fucked now. That was so amazing. And what she was saying was that there was such a lack of raw male masculine energy around, and there's nothing on TV, there's nothing events, that she said, you have no idea the effect of how powerful that is on women to be around, strong masculine energy that is caring and loving masculine energy, but is strong and centered in where it is. So for me, that was, I've probably given Tony Robbins about £15,000 of my money, and I would have paid a lot more. And it just reminds you, going to events in person or online just gets you out of your comfort zone, if that makes, and gets you around different people. And I think, when I was looking up, it said, he's impacted over 100 million people from nearly 200 countries. That is scale on a considerable level, because even if you pick Elon Musk, he hasn't improved many people's lives. He's created things that are interesting, but there's a difference between products that will help you drive around or transforming your lives, basically. So yeah, really interesting to talk about. And if, for the people watching, be it live or on the recording, if you can be bothered to put in the comments, who would you have picked as your titan of business? Because there's some lost ones that you would, that I'm too young to probably remember, that maybe David's too young to remember, that we might have not thought about. And there's some new up and coming ones that I think, have learned to scale with AI and using tech and everything. So interesting times. Nick, any thoughts on that before we go to our lost and found?
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I think there's so much that comes into the psychology there, and that's what Tony was really, really good at, was being able to understand the psychology both of the human as well as of the mass. And it's really interesting how you describe some of those things, and the way that he played out was really, really good, and he was able to do that. Two comments I think stand out particularly for me, and the one was that, and this actually leans into the second part of what you were saying about that energy and taking your, I call it taking your place in the world, and that is the fact that he didn't do anything to that person. That person, he created an environment in which that person could make a decision or make the choice.
Yeah.
Because it's so interesting to watch, and myself as well. Look at yourself first, but you there's so much that goes into, I want personal development, I want to do better, I want to learn, I want to do all these things. But until you make the actual choice and make the hard choices or the hard decisions, that's where the real sort of change happens. And it's really fascinating to watch, that sort of process, and that links to the masculine energy again of this idea of what is that, and that's so beautiful how you put it, the integrating the masculine in male, but also the feminine energy in male. So Jung speaks about the divine masculine, divine feminine, and how you integrate that into yourself. So you don't just become this hard masculine thing. There's the female energy that comes in as well. And then for the female as well, like what that looks like in terms of really bringing that forward. So I think that really stuck out. But the big thing for me was really that drive of deciding to take your place in the world. Especially in entrepreneurship, there's this. I think it's just how we taught across the board is that we aren't taught to stand up and be that force, be that light, show who you are, and show the best part of you. And that doesn't have to be keyboard warriors, trolls, that sort of stuff. It's not about that at all. It's actually stepping up into that power and going, this is who I am, this is who I was meant to be, and I'm going to now give that to the world. And often that is of service. So it's not I kind of have the, if it's going to hurt, it's most likely not what you should be doing. If it's going to serve, it's most likely is what is inside you. And that kind of is a bit of an internal thermometer or barometer, as it were. And leaning into that all of us have to do it. And it's a lifetime thing, but really honing that skill.
I was just thinking, as you said that, I have a post scheduled for LinkedIn tomorrow, which talks about the fact that the media and empire would love men to be weak because then they're easier to be controlled. And I have a picture of lots of the events I've done with men, and all solid men, and they'd like you to sit at home, play little computer games, eat shit, drink fizzy drinks, be depressed, take tablets, don't have sex with your wife if you've even got one, and be a pathetic individual. So you have to take control of yourself. You have to take ownership and then start improving.
Definitely.
Now,
my top tip then before we go on to Lost and Found, my top tip is don't spend 15 grand. Go out and buy a mirror.
Yeah.
Dave, you are so wise. You are so wise.
and just sit in front of it for a while, and just see what happens, and you will be amazed. You will truly be amazed. I suffer and have done for many years from depression, and a dear friend of mine said something to me which was so simple and so profound. I was in a very dark place for many years ago now, and he said to me, Dave, you're the only person who can get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, and you're like,
that was like being hit by lightning.
Yeah,
because it was so. I'd never thought of it before. Do you understand that? Yeah. So and after that, I'd regularly sit in front of the mirror and say, "Okay, right, off we go."
And that's where again, because I work only basically with like middle-aged and onwards men, is that most of them they'd rather do anything than do that. They'd rather say, I'm going to take a course, listen to a podcast, watch a thing, go to some stuff, read half a book, whatever, as opposed to do one of the hardest things, which is often the most simple and most powerful. Maybe we could launch a course around just sitting in the mirror. We could sell the mirror as well. And there could be an upsell. I don't know. We'll come back to that. Well, let's run Lost and Found.
Give you a
we'll see what we come up with.
let's go to Lost and Found then, guys.
Go for it.
Ever wonder how millions vanish into thin air, or how a single dollar can make all the difference? Join us on Lost and Found, where we dive into the wild world of financial mysteries. From misplaced fortunes to unexpected windfalls, we unravel the stories of people, companies, organizations, and even governments who've lost and found millions. Lost and Found, because every dollar has a story.
Lovely
There
stuff.
you go.
Who knows what's going to come up here? Nick, do you want to go first?
Let's do it. So mine is an interesting one. I actually want the team to kind of think of whether or not this is a dollar lost or a dollar found. A company, what if I told you that you could order 10 outfits, try them at home, and only pay for the ones you keep? Trio is a Bangalorean company. They're in Bangalore fashion, and they have raised about $360,000 in seed investment. And basically what their whole process is they're going to deliver 10 items of clothing to you free of charge. You try them all on, and you only then purchase what you want to keep. And it's really interesting because this kind of smacks a little bit of Amazon, or what Amazon used to do, and to a large degree what Amazon does, where they deliver product and you can then take it or leave it. You can always send it back without any cost. And funny enough, Amazon has shut that project down.
It's a good sign.
Yeah, hasn't worked. The returns are horrendous.
Nick, I was just going to say, again, I don't pretend I know a lot about this, but I read something a while ago where this was the problem with companies in the UK that were offering, you could like send it back for free. Number one, it isn't free because the delivery will get put into the process somewhere. But this was the problem where you had so many parcels going backwards and forwards, and of course it costs you to have man hours of these parcels coming back. You've got to unpack them. People might not have wrapped them in the right stuff and everything. So I'd be really interested to see how that works, because you feel like you would need slave labor to be able to make it work, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what fascinates me is the fact that there's someone who's prepared to pay $350K out there on a concept which may or may not have worked. So it's quite interesting to see where that's going, and whether or not we worked in a forecasting, but actually interesting cash forecasting a number of years ago, and forecasting where cash is going to be at certain points. So rugby matches, soccer matches, whatever, the ATM that it's supposed to be in versus the central bank that it's supposed to be in. Like that whole algorithm that we were writing was fascinating to try and predict. And if you had that, you applied that same concept onto what you're talking about, or what we're talking about now, you'd have to literally have central distribution points. And if you get your distribution points right, but then you've got the various sizes. So yeah, I'm a little bit on the fence on this one.
You're not allowed to sit on the fence. You're not allowed to say.
Well, okay, 100%. Well, then, yeah, I think this is heading for a tank. But I'm so keen to watch it over the next couple of months.
There you go. No, you can't sit on the fence. It's lost or found. It's not like I'm not sure. Is it in my pocket or somebody else's? No, it's lost or found.
I like it. Well,
now.
That's a good one, Nick, because again, on paper you might be like, this sounds like a great idea, but I said I'm skeptical because of the moving parts involved. And even there was a company near us that only accepts furniture and sideboards and tables and all this stuff from companies, because companies were saying they send it to people and then people send it back and want a refund, but the cost of having all repackage everything is so much. They just send it to this place and take a very light loss or very light profit on it, and they make the money on it. So yeah, it's repackaging is costly in itself. David, do you want to go next on your lost and found?
No, I'm going to leave you. I like to go last because I've always got something a little bit exciting for everybody. So
fair enough. Well, I've written it down because I don't want to get it wrong. But Bob Bull, which neither of you are probably going to know who that is. David might know.
Well, it's Mrs. Bull's son, isn't it? I mean, everybody knows that.
He was known as Bungalow Bob, but he was a British property, let's call it entrepreneur. And he went from, this is a good, billionaire status to personal bankruptcy by the end of 2023.
Well, so he buy a football club.
Well, that would be another way to go bankrupt. He was thought to have got to about 1.9 billion in his fortune through its Royal Life, converting caravan parks into luxury retirement bungalows, etc., etc. But a brilliant word is his business unraveled very fast. I love the word unraveled because it gives you that idea of what happened. There was a 2.8 billion refinancing deal that collapsed in late 2022. He had to borrow millions from someone linked to an organized crime group in Ireland. And that loan snowballed to 42 million in weeks. And it ended up leading to a debt of 725 million and bankruptcy in 2023. And he had to sell or had repossessed, I think it was a 10 million pound mansion near Southampton, which is down the coast. He had 12 supercars, a bowling alley, spa, gym, cinema, all these business and luxury assets. And it just reminds you, doesn't it, that, you know, building a lot of money is one thing, keeping it is another. And I've known people that I would say the easy part was becoming a millionaire. The hard part was keeping it, basically. So I think we can safely give that a big thumbs down on the lost money thing. Who knows? Maybe
there we go.
Maybe.
But you know, I'm doing this for the Irish crime syndicate. You know, come on, guys.
They'll make some money somewhere.
Making money, yeah.
Dave, you're next. Then you're last.
Yeah, well, I'm going to start off by doing this, and because this actually made me laugh. So this is a sex toy company, Singapore-based, and they've lost two of their largest clients here, the Dutch Bol.com and Easy Toys, who are probably the two largest. Certainly, Easy Toys just does nothing other than mail order for sex toys, but it's been hacked, and these are for remote sex toys that you can choose to put in any orifice that you wish, and then they can be controlled by remote control via your phone. And so they've been hacked. So all this data has gone to whoever. There are other people sitting in, you know, having a lot of fun in North Korea or Iran or whoever this week's bad boy is.
Yeah.
And you know, you're sitting there, you're just sitting there watching Coronation Street, watching the TV or whatever, and all of a sudden you think,
you start twitching.
You start twitching. So yeah, but the thing about it is that this happens at the beginning of the year, and they just kind of ignored it. They just said, whatever. But when people were having these incidents, let's put it that way, and then complained to Bol.com and to Easy Toys, of course, who were just distributors of the product.
Yeah.
They then went back to the company and said, "Look, you know, guys, we may well have been hacked." Wow. So that definitely is a lost dollar simply because they've had to remove everything. You know, nobody wants to use them anymore.
If you're out somewhere and you see someone, they start twitching and you think they've got a nervous twitch, it might not be that. It might be they've invested in some special eggs or something like that.
That's right. And somebody somewhere in some foreign country has got them in their control.
What could go wrong?
Then again, of course, you could say all publicity is good publicity. But
yeah. Yeah, in fact, that's an interesting topic, wouldn't it? Because, you know, if your company gets bad publicity, it depends how bad it is as to whether it gets shown to more people. Because maybe you'll align, you know, if it's fraudulent, it's probably bad. So maybe we should talk about publicity, and also I think PR is a big topic that most people don't have a clue about the power of it and how you utilize it for business. So I'll add that to my list.
Well, I'm sure there's some marketing guru, Nick, that would go into the client and say, well, hey, look, I mean, people didn't know about your product before. Now they do. So, you know, you could probably end up, selling a lot more.
More to come on these topics.
Yeah, I try to always do a little bit of fun for Lost and Found. So, there you go.
I like it. And it's always finish with dildos. I think that's a strong business mindset, to be honest.
Indeed. which of course is a place in Canada.
Is it?
Those people who didn't know, on the Newfoundland island, a place called Dildo.
I'll add it to my list of places to visit, basically.
Don't ask me how I know that, but that's.
I'd rather not. I'd rather not know, to be honest.
I'm doing it for another show, so that's the reason why I was researching it.
We'll save it. But no, again, it's been really good because, my question is always, with Titans of Business, what can you learn from them and how can they help your business? If you're early stages, if you're in decline, if you're just kind of like flatlining, could you go and literally, you could use AI to say, tell AI about your business and say, what lessons could I learn from the lessons that Tony Robbins or anybody else has kind of helped me with, and see what comes up basically. But in between that, as always, it's great when people join us either live or on the kind of the replay, as it were. If you can like and subscribe, that'd be great. And one of the great things, if you can comment to say what interesting takeaways you've had from the event, what Titan would you be part of? And we'll be back next week. David, anything else to say?
No, just if your wife's twitching or your boyfriend's twitching next year, check his phone. That's all I can say.
Big one to finish on. Cheers, guys.
Till next week. Bye-bye.